Time for an oil change? Head to Jiffy Lube. We've got you covered. We've also got you covered when it comes to oil changes, thanks to Pennzoil Synthetic Motor Oil, getting you back on the road in a jiffy. Jiffy Lube. Leave worry behind.
Well, hello there on this Monday. I'm Wendy Nix with Dan Graziano, Jeff Darlington, and Teddy Bruschi. And here's the good news, especially if you happen to be a fan of the New England Patriots, don't put away your Gronk jerseys just yet. You've got time. Because although no final decision has yet to be made, sources say it is more than likely that the 28-year-old star will continue his football career in New England, despite serious reservations resulting from injury and, of course, mental fatigue. Gronk is reportedly almost certain to come back as long as Tom Brady remains with the team. Since he was drafted in 2010, no one has more touchdown catches than does Rob Gronkowski. He and Des Bryant, the only two players with at least 70 over the last 8 seasons. It is both a positive and negative, but consider his games played. He's played fewer games than anyone in the top 4, highlighting both his remarkable productivity, but also his durability concerns. Jeff Darlington has been following this, and he's here with us. So, Jeff, walk us through where Gronk is right now and perhaps how you think he's coming to this decision. You cited the good news, that he is pretty certain that he will return as long as Tom Brady remains on board with the Patriots. That being the good news, considering the fact that these retirement considerations have been very serious, even dating into the 2017 regular season because of the physical strain and mental strain on his body. The diluted aspect of this, the bad news potentially, is that there is certainly some discord between him and Bill Belichick at this point. Frustrations on both sides of the aisle. Gronkowski recognizing that the mental strain of the Patriot way, the Patriot structure, the high strain of that organization is definitely weighing on him and not going to change. He realizes that if he's going to go in and commit to 2018, it's not going to be different. So he needs to know that as he does that. Belichick frustrated because he's not necessarily feeling, according to those that Belichick has spoken to, that Gronkowski is, quote, all in. He has cited something as nuanced as an Instagram post where Gronkowski was hugging Danny Amendola, who had just signed a contract with the Dolphins, under which he said, be free, be happy. So there are some things that need to be worked out here. The good news is that Gronkowski thinks. Look, if you're reading the tea leaves, be free, be happy. I mean, there is some connotation there, Teddy.
Yeah, Wendy, I can understand the frustration of Rob Gronkowski being in that locker room and how hard it can be at times. Two sources of frustration from a player's perspective is this. Number one, contract status. Rob Gronkowski, I'm sure, feels like another long-term deal that he's underpaid. Sure, that frustration can come right there. And also, the way that I sustain my body, the way that I train my body, the way I rehabilitate my body. And it's been reported that Rob Gronkowski is a firm believer in the way Tom Brady also handles things in the locker room. There was discord with Alex Guerrero, how he left the locker room, and now he was welcomed there, and then he wasn't. Those are the two major deals. So you're telling me the way I prepare myself on the field isn't acceptable now. There's a disconnect somewhere within that organization. I don't know exactly what happened with Guerrero and why he's not in there anymore, but you have some of your best players that believe in that. You have to let them believe in that and let them rehabilitate and prepare to be on the field how they choose. What I will say, and I think you're spot on, Teddy, though, Rob Gronkowski is wise to assume that if he does come back, it will be under the current parameters. I mean, we've seen that it's not going to change. So you have to know what you're getting into if you decide to come back for another season. There's a lot of work here, and a lot of this started to come out in January with Seth Wickersham's piece on the Patriots and the discord between Brady and Belichick and Kraft. And obviously, based on what Jeff is telling us here, it hasn't gotten any better since then. And I think there's obviously issues with a group of people that has had a great deal of success together and is probably at some level, whether they want to admit it outwardly or not, confronting the end of it, right? I mean, at this point, if you're Tom Brady, you're going to be 41 years old. You're Bill Belichick, you're going to be 66 years old. You're closer to the end than you are to the beginning. So people are thinking about their legacies, what they want to do in the short window that's left available to them. And I think the tension kind of ratchets up. Teddy, you've been there, you've played there, you know what it's like. People who've been through there, players who've been through this, it's not for everyone. The Patriot way, right? You got to have tough skin. You got to be in there, and I guarantee you one thing's not going to change. It's the way Bill Belichick rides you, okay? He's going to try to get every single ounce out of you every single day. You'll come off of a practice thinking it was your best practice you've ever had, and he'll tell you what you did wrong the next day. It's just the way it is. I remember when Junior and Seau and I were playing linebacker together. Belichick would ride us because we took a wrong step in front of the entire team. Me and Junior just look at each other and laugh because we know the old man's grumpy sometimes. So that's just the way it is. Some of these younger players need to get to that point in their careers to where that's just the way he's going to be. All right. And it's understandable. Let's form our own thing in the locker room and realize he's just going to constantly ride us. But however, like I was saying, don't interfere on how I prepare myself, how I sustain my physical health. If I believe in something, if I believe in that, Alex Guerrero is the one that gets me right, is the one that gets me on that field and gets me back on the field as quickly as I can. Can't he be an added dimension for that team or someone that I use and is very convenient for me? Don't give it, then take it away. That's where I think there has to be some type of understanding in terms of how the players want to train and how the players make it on that field to where how the organization feels that way.
So you're pretty clear on that, Teddy, that you should be allowed to train and get ready physically any way you choose, or at least if it's productive. Jeff,
get everything on the field. You defer to Coach Belichick.
But not your body.
You got your goals. This is what we have to do. You decide on who plays. You decide on how you want me to play. What kind of receiver, what kind of reads I'll go on as a quarterback, whatever, as a tight end, how I block. Block me on techniques, yes. But the way I complete it, the way that I believe, my nutrition, the way that I rehabilitate, that's on me. That's on me as a professional, especially if I'm in my 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th year. I've been doing this a long time now.
And you've shown that you can.
But that would be a concession. Absolutely. That would be a concession on Bill Belichick's part because he proved in 2017 he was not interested in that, casting away Guerrero from the building. So that's my question. Is it my way or the highway when it comes to Belichick, or will there be concessions to the point where this family can kind of come back together and get along for at least another year?
Look, it's interesting and it's layered. And to Dan's point, they've had such a tremendous amount of success together. Right. So at the very least, it looks like we'll have another run and we'll see, what gives. Well, it brings us right to Overreaction Monday. We'll start right there in New England. The Patriots better off trading Rob Gronkowski. Is that an overreaction, Jeff, or not an overreaction?
It is an overreaction because of the fallout that would come from the trade. This trade specifically, I think we've seen that the Patriot way can succeed without any one player, maybe outside of Tom Brady. We have no idea in that regard. But the fallout from the potential of Gronkowski leaving via trade on someone like Tom Brady, I don't think that's necessarily something the Patriots at this point would want to find out.
Dan?
Yeah, overreaction. I mean, again, you can look at it in a vacuum and say, Bill Belichick, no one's bigger than the team, et cetera. This is a situation where maybe in the past you move on. But as we just saw there, a special and unique player that can do things other players literally cannot do. And when that is taken away, the significance of the adjustment is not to be underestimated, and the significance of the impact it would have inside that locker room, I think, is what makes this an overreaction.
I agree. It's an overreaction, and the biggest reason I'll tell you why is along with what Dan's talking about. He's one of the few players that can take all of the Belichick writing, all of the pressing, and still go out there and express himself individually to have a good time and play football. Yes, you might have rode me all week, but still, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to dance, I'm going to spike, I'm going to show that still you can play football and have a good time.
It's so true. He's always managed to find that balance when he's healthy, that he can do it on the field, then he can do whatever he wants off the field and still produce.
There was a passing reference earlier in our discussion to a contract situation. I wouldn't underestimate the potential impact of this here, right? I mean, he's still relatively underpaid relative to the top guys at his position, which he obviously is. Last May, they did an adjustment to his contract where they packed 2017 with incentives. I wonder if something like that might end up being on the table for 2018 in terms of the ability to maybe smooth things over a little.
Well, and I will say this, too. Once you begin this retirement conversation, it continues. So perhaps we get through 2018. This will resurface again. That's just how it works once it begins. Well, today is the first day teams with new coaches only can begin offseason workouts. But the Cardinals, a new head coach, Steve Wilks, don't start until tomorrow. The Bears have the green light. New head coach Matt Nagy starting 2 years of the Mitch Trubisky era in Chicago. Another NFC North team with a new boss is in Detroit. Matt Patricia looks to improve on last year's 9-7 record in a tough division. And the Colts finally got their man, Frank Reich. Plenty of room to improve on a 4-12 record. But Andrew Luck's status remains in question. You heard Pat Shurmur. He's at the helm for the New York Giants. They can begin offseason workouts this week as well, and there's plenty to unpack there in New York. John Gruden already making waves with personnel moves in Oakland. He'll get his first up-close look at his Raiders team this week. And the Titans, the last of the 7 teams with new head coaches, former Texans assistant and former Teddy Bruschi teammate.
There he is.
There he is, Mike Vrabel, leading workouts this week. But we start in Arizona. They lost both head coach Bruce Arians and their quarterback Carson Palmer to retirement. D-back Tyrann Mathieu was cut. He's now in Texas. John Brown also left in free agency. With no quarterbacks on the roster, Arizona signed both Sam Bradford and then Mike Glennon to fill their quarterback room. They also signed former Bengals tackle Andre Smith. So it is Monday. That means Overreaction Monday. Here we go. Cardinals, I think the operative word here, are definitely taking a quarterback in the first round. Teddy Bruschi.
Come on, Wendy. Are we always talking about quarterbacks? That's an overreaction.
Yes.
We just signed Sam Bradford. Right about this time of the offseason, he's looking good. He's healthy. Oh. He walks in the room. He's got a great work ethic. It's like, healthy? We love Sam Bradford. Let's go with him. Sign Mike Glennon as backup. This may be for the Cardinals a best player type of situation. Whoever's left on the board, they got other holes to fill. Best player left, get him. Let's not worry about the quarterback position. We got a couple veterans there.
Sam Bradford is your quarterback. You better worry about your
that's what I'm saying.
He's only healthy in April.
He sounds like the Rams. He sounds like the Eagles. He sounds like the Vikings.
Yeah, that's right. That's fair. Mike Glennon is there as well.
And actually,
all that money you got in the quarterback room now. Go ahead.
I look at Sam Bradford, though, too. And I'm going to say this is not an overreaction. I look at Sam Bradford. I'm just like, first 2 weeks of the season, he looked like an MVP. But I'm going to say that they do look at a quarterback. Steve Keim, way too smart to put all his eggs in that basket. The question is, can they move from 15 into a spot that will require one of those top quarterbacks? And to do that, they'd probably have to go to 4 to trade into the Cleveland Browns spot. That's going to cost them 15th overall this year, maybe a second-round pick this year, a first-round pick next year, a second-round pick next year. So the cost is high. I'm still going to say, though, given what they have.
It's a high cost.
Well, therein lies the rub, right? They're in that no man's land at 15, a very difficult spot for drafting a quarterback, and the price would be exceptionally high, I would think, to get to 4.
I still say they make that move this year. I think this is not an overreaction. I agree with Jeff, not Teddy, who's making a face, and that's fine. But I think that having gone the last couple of drafts without doing it has left Arizona in a very difficult position for the long term. Even if Sam Bradford is healthy this year, which is a gigantic if, as everyone knows, including Sam, you still haven't addressed your long term. Mike Glennon's not going to be your long-term answer. He might be your long-term backup. But in terms of the franchise quarterback to build your organization around for the next few years and beyond, Arizona has failed the last couple of drafts to acquire that. They had opportunity to acquire it last year. Obviously, there were some candidates, as it turns out. I was surprised they didn't do that last year, and I would not be surprised at all to see them make that move up that Jeff is talking about to try and get one of these guys.
They'd have to move. A lot of these guys we're looking at right now, they're going to be gone.
I don't even think Lamar Jackson gets to 15 at this point. I mean, and he would be the 5th guy.
I don't know about that.
And so I think those top 4 guys go probably top 5, 6 in the draft. And so now you're going to see the scramble. And that's why, because I think once those 4 guys are off the board, that's when the teams that didn't get one start to scramble, and I think that's why he goes.
What does Teddy know about football anyway?
Well, I mean,
I don't know about quarterback. Of the quarterback position, that's all.
What did you say, the overemphasis?
Defensive guy over here.
Is Arizona the place that Sam Bradford can finally stay healthy? I'm asking the multi-million-dollar question, literally. But is this the place he can finally stay
it's possible he stays healthy.
And he's certainly productive when he does.
There's no way to base your entire plan on the possibility that he stays healthy. You have to hedge.
But you have to hedge. But I love the idea of signing Sam. I actually thought the Denver Broncos might do something like that. I thought Elway would fall in love with what we keep falling in love with Sam Bradford.
You just have to have insurance if you're going to go that route.
Right. And they have in Glennon, they have a backup who has played in the league. And if Sam has to miss a couple of weeks here and there, then you can put a guy in that the stage isn't going to be too big for him. But again, Glennon is not the guy. If Bradford doesn't work out and he doesn't get healthy and the knee doesn't come back, Glennon's not your long-term answer. That's why I think they have to address it now.
This isn't a statement that people wouldn't find shocking. I would be shocked if he lasted 16.
It can't be considered shocking at this point.
You just can't. You have to plan for him not being there.
Correct. And you need that offensive line to protect whoever's back there.
Sounds like Teddy wants to draft a quarterback for the Cardinals.
Why do you think? Maybe
he just doesn't want to. He just doesn't want to admit it.
Glennon could get it done for a little bit.
He's got Glennon. We're fine.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like a whole new person.
Disclaimer, you will not become a whole new person. This is impossible. You might be able to join a gym or diet program, buy a new wardrobe, get hair implants, but your DNA and physical form will remain the same. Geico waives any and all liability if you attempt to become a new person, except a cyborg. If you choose to become a half-human, half-cybernetic organism with lasers for eyes, the Geico legal team would be cool with that, because, quote, laser eyes are pretty sweet. Pew, 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 end quote.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
It is once again the John Gruden era in Oakland. A busy offseason there, roster turnover substantial. Michael Crabtree, Sean Smith, and 2016 second-team All-Pro punter Marquette King shown the door. Among the notable additions are former Packers wideout Jordy Nelson, former Colts cornerback Rashawn Melvin, and former Bucks running back Doug Martin. Let's start with Marquette King, though. Reportedly released in part due to some personality conflicts. Are you surprised by his departure?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was surprised. I thought it was a surprise to release a player of that caliber. I mean, I obviously the reports that have come out indicate why, and you know, whether that's fair or not. You know, you look at it big picture, you could see John Gruden deciding to do that. But I was surprised. It's been a more significant roster overhaul than I thought was necessary in Oakland. So a lot of it's been surprising.
You can see all new head coaches. You can see how there are certain moves they make to establish culture. And culture is something that John Gruden's trying to establish. He talked about Jordy Nelson, the signing of the former Packer wide receiver of being, hopefully he's a Raider lifer. I mean, that can help me establish something special here in terms of work ethic, on field, things like that. And quite honestly, an old school coach like John Gruden, I can understand how you just don't want an sort of celebrity punter. You want them to do their job, go out there and come back off the field. You don't want dances. You don't want penalty flags. You don't want distractions, especially from a position that sometimes doesn't even get one or two or more than two reps a game. So I can see where he's coming from.
I remember back in 2008, I was covering the Miami Dolphins for the Miami Herald. Bill Parcells came in, took over the organization, and cut Jay Feely. And Feely and I will joke about this today because Feely liked to talk to people in the locker room, and Parcells hated the fact that he was even friendly. So, like, these coaches, these old school guys come in there and really try to make their mark. They did it with Feely. They'll do it with a punter or a kicker like that. There's no patience or tolerance for those guys.
That third-string defensive lineman that doesn't pass the conditioning test. Get rid of him right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, good luck to you. You're really in trouble, to your point. And the punter, yes. But this all leads to this question, because this is something we've talked about since his return to the sidelines. And that is, on Overreaction Monday, Gruden will have trouble connecting with today's players. I say that because it is a different NFL than we saw 10 years, certainly 20 years ago. I don't know who wants to start here, but I'll simply ask if it's an overreaction.
It's not an overreaction. It's been a long time. It's been a long time for him. It's been, you can call it a football generation, where he comes in. I believe at this point in the offseason program, he hasn't met with anyone. You know, he hasn't met a good majority of his players. So how that works out over the course of not only the offseason, but the year, getting used to the offseason structure, getting used to sometimes even the shortening of meetings due to players' attention span now. You can't have these marathon meetings anymore because these players just aren't built that way. They need little breaks to refresh. It's the millennial word that we'll bring up again. These players are different now, and the best head coaches know how to get the best out of them.
Look, teachers are teaching differently, even in schools. I mean, this entire generation is different with their attention span and that type of thing.
Not only that, the previous generation also didn't always get along great with John Gruden. It's part of the reason he was ousted.
And then there's that.
In Tampa Bay. He's an old school guy, wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get to work. And I'm not saying, by the way, so it's not an overreaction. I'm not saying that that's necessarily an indicator of success or failure either. I don't necessarily know that he has to connect with these players in order to be successful. We've seen it plenty around the NFL today. I mean, he's going to have the respect of his locker room, but you can gain that in different ways. Ultimately, though, I mean, as likable, the funny thing is we all probably, I think the general fan all view John Gruden as being this fun, energetic, likable guy. I mean, look at him right there. But, man, he's a hard-nosed, old-school coach that isn't always easy to get along with if you're not willing to give everything in your soul to what he wants you to do.
Agreed.
The players that the Raiders are going to draft this year were in 5th or 6th grade the last time John Gruden was an NFL coach.
Wow.
I mean, that's crazy to think about, right? So they only know him as the Monday Night Football guy.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And I think there is going to be a shock to the system when all of a sudden he's your hard-driving head coach.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think that's a potential issue. I say not an overreaction. I will say this. There is last year, Sean McVay was lauded and Coach of the Year and a lot of success, and he's a young guy that has remarkable ability, and so everybody wants to get the next Sean McVay. I wondered why people weren't as excited to try and get the next sort of Doug Marrone, Tom Coughlin combination, because they had almost as much success and more postseason success than the Rams had, and that's a different way to go. You can go old school, you can go disciplinarian as long as you sell it and as long as you have the right kind of players in your locker room. But I think it's an interesting way to go.
If you want to do that, you better have success early.
Show me it
works.
Show me it works.
If you start 1-4, it's like, man, stop yelling at me, man, because it's not working.
Yeah. We saw that with Josh McDaniels, saw that with Eric Mangini. You've seen that before where guys come in and it doesn't work.
Fortunately for him, he's got a quarterback that can help him win football games. It looks good.
I would agree with Jeff that it's not necessarily an absolute for success. I mean, you don't have to relate per se, but you do have to win early so they buy in.
It helps.
I mean, that I think you do have to do. It certainly helps. Khalil Mack is a player they may possibly be looking at an extension for.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Going into his 5th-year option season at a little bit under $14 million, which is fine compensation, but puts him about 12th in the league among edge rushers, and he's certainly a better player than that. So that's a key bit of offseason business for the Raiders, is getting Khalil Mack signed to an extension. The interesting thing people are watching on Khalil Mack is Aaron Donald in L.A. also wants an extension. One of these guys is going to end up being the highest paid defensive player in the league, and it's probably going to be the guy who does his deal second.
That's right. The waiting game.
You wonder if they can get Khalil Mack to the table before the Donald deal is done.
I would think they'd want to.
I wonder what the representation do they discuss? Donald's representation and Mack's representation, but definitely.
It is funny.
Highest paid.
That's the word I'm using in those negotiations. Highest paid.
Yeah. But it's always funny how guys are like, I want to get paid now. I'd be like, I want to get paid right after he gets paid.
Right. Can I go after him? Right. Let's just wait and see. It makes a lot of sense. Again, Khalil Mack, the final year of his rookie deal. We continue our look at first-year head coaches. Matt Nagy, among those first-time coaches that take over new teams. He's been charged with turning the tide in Chicago, and his first order of business will be helping quarterback Mitchell Trubisky reach his potential. And to that end, Trubisky perhaps needed some additional help. It's not surprising. His rookie season was underwhelming. He ranked poorly in total QBR, had only 7 TDs, but remember who he was throwing to. Top 3 wideouts or tight ends in targets last season: Kendall Wright, Josh Bellamy, and Dontrell Inman. Those players have had a total of 1 career season with 900 receiving yards. And so Chicago invested to turn things around for Trubisky this offseason, starting with former Jags wideout Allen Robinson, a potential number 1 wide receiver when and if he's healthy. Former Falcons burner Taylor Gabriel also joined the Windy City, a possibly explosive addition to Trubisky's arsenal of receivers. And Super Bowl hero Trey Burton left the Eagles in free agency. He signed with the Bears. He's been linked to the Travis Kelce role in Nagy's offense. So more overreaction. And we've seen this, everybody talking about looking for the next Jared Goff. That's what we do. Mitchell Trubisky will break out a la Jared Goff. Overreaction? Not an overreaction.
I think it's an overreaction. I mean, I just think because it underestimates what Goff and the Rams did last year. And I think Trubisky could take a major step forward this year and still not make the leap that Goff and the Rams did last year on their offense. So I think the performance of the Los Angeles Rams on offense was one of the more remarkable stories of the year. And I think it's probably more realistic to expect more of a traditional progression for Mitch Trubisky as opposed to the big leap.
I completely agree with that assessment, and I'll add to the fact that we got to remember the Rams had the highest scoring offense in the NFL after being the lowest output the year before. So the margin there that Jared Goff managed to leap was not only really good, it was historic. So I think I'm not even trying to knock Trubisky, but I think that we need to give Jared Goff a tremendous amount of credit for the leap that he made.
Yeah, no one expected that. So I say, why not? It's not an overreaction. Why can't he? You bring in Matt Nagy, you bring Helfrich over a year off, coming over from Oregon when he was there. They are going to catch these defenses off guard. I mean, last year, Chicago's offense was primitive at times.
Abysmal,
run the ball. I mean, they are going to bring some creativity, and it's going to take maybe the first couple months for defensive coordinators to get used to this new look. And Trubisky, athletic quarterback with those receivers you're talking about, I anticipate it's going to be a lot of catch and run type of routes, especially with Gabriel underneath, Robinson over the top, maybe things like that. Why not? He can have a breakout
Well, and if you're the Chicago Bears, you don't necessarily need it to be Jared Goff. I mean, that'd be phenomenal.
That's right.
But to your point, there's a lot of real estate between where they were and where Jared Goff was last season. So they could still see some increase in productivity.
A lot of the production of the new additions is a little bit speculative. Allen Robinson's coming off a major injury.
Yes.
Trey Burton's never really had the significant role that he's going to have there. I mean, I expect, a good year from Jordan Howard, probably a bigger role for Tariq Cohen. There are pieces there in place. I just think it's a lot to expect it to come together as quickly as it did for LA last year.
Breakout season, absolutely. I don't think it's an overreaction as a breakout season. But Goff, man, what Goff did was exceptional.
When you think about where Jared Goff was in that offense and then where they were, why not? Listen, Teddy,
Let's
I like
go,
that.
Bears.
It's spring. It may not be snowing everywhere.
It's snowing outside.
There's reason to be positive if you're Teddy Bruschi, I guess. All right, meanwhile, former Patriots defensive coordinator Matt Patricia takes over in Detroit. Again, our look today at teams with new head coaches because they can begin workouts today. Patricia will lead a Lions team that went 9-7 last season under Jim Caldwell. He'll have Matt Stafford under center as he tries to build Detroit into a Super Bowl contender. Patricia spent 6 years at the helm of that Patriots defense. It's a span that included 2 Super Bowl wins and last year's loss to the Eagles. During that time, New England ranked second in scoring defense at less than 20 points per game. The Patriots also a top 10 unit in takeaways, total QBR and touchdown to interception ratio. They did pretty well. The Lions will make the playoffs. My friends, is this an overreaction or not an overreaction?
That's not an overreaction. I'll just jump out and say it right now. Look at this offense. The offense is staying consistent. Jim Bob Cooter, still the offensive coordinator. And defensively, they will get a facelift. There will be a lot of different schemes they have to get used to on the defensive side of the ball. Pasqualoni is the defensive coordinator. He'll call the defenses, but Patricia will have great influence on it. This team will be a contender next year in a tough division.
They got a lot of pieces in place.
She didn't say contender. She said playoff team.
I still say not an overreaction.
Man, if you've been to the Patriots, he loves you. That's for sure. The NFC is loaded, man. You got the Eagles. I think the Cowboys are better. You have the Packers with Aaron Rodgers coming back. The Vikings, the Saints, the Panthers, the Falcons, the Rams.
They're all not going to be good.
The Seahawks are the 49ers going to be the team everybody's hoping they can be. I think there are 6 spots there, and the Lions are like this sort of 9-7, 10-6 team every single year. And I just don't think in the current NFC that's going to be enough. They're going to have to be a better team than they were last year.
I think Teddy's saying they will be. Yeah.
I do think an overreaction because when we looked at midseason, the NFC was just loaded, logjam there. And you looked at the AFC and it felt like, well, who are the teams really contending with the Patriots? It didn't feel like the parity in the AFC matched the parity of the NFC. So it is going to be difficult. I was going to say overreaction, but Teddy knows.
Don't let him scare you, man.
Wait,
Teddy knows Matt Patricia so well.
Don't let him scare you.
Come on.
Don't be intimidated.
I just
be your own man.
You know what?
We
Lions
don't like
are going to the Super
bluffers
Bowl
around here. What'd you say? Lions are going to the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Come on. You got to stand your ground, Jeff Darlington.
That
Come
could
on.
be an overreaction.
And now he's disagreeing with you.
I think the snow in April has gotten to his head.
Have you ever sat next to Teddy Bruschi for an hour, though? It's a little intimidating. I feel like agreeing with him from time to time.
Yeah, we're used to it. It's fine. You get over it. Don't worry about it. Hoping to calm the waters and prove last season was the exception and certainly not the rule, Pat Shurmur assumes the head coaching duties for the New York Giants in 2018. He's expressed total support for quarterback Eli Manning while towing the company line when it comes to star wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr., who is equally clear he would like a new deal despite the off-the-field issues that continue to plague the star wide receiver. We say hello now from the Verizon Film Room, and we continue with Overreaction Monday, our weekly check on Odell Beckham Jr.'s status.
It's only weekly?
It's at least for good measure Monday and Friday. We'll say that. Overreaction Monday, how about this? Odell Beckham Jr. will be on this Giants roster week one. You cover this team, Dan. Is that an overreaction?
It's not an overreaction, even though it's not a certainty that he'll be there. But it's not an overreaction. I still think it's more likely that he's on the team than not. But the next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting leading up to the draft. The draft, I think, is a very important deadline on this. They're not going to trade him for a 2019 pick. So if he's going to be traded, it'll be before this year's draft. What's going to happen in terms of when they start their off-season workouts? Is he going to be there? And yes, it's voluntary. They can't hold it against him if he's not. But what's the communication like between him and the coaching staff, between him and the organization? What does that lead them to believe about how all-in he plans to be throughout this offseason? And that could have an effect. Adam Schefter reporting last week that they're asking for 2 first-round picks. Why wouldn't they be at this point? Mm-hmm. But if the relationship sours further in the next couple of weeks, it's entirely possible that those demands drop and that they decide there's an addition by subtraction situation. I don't think they're there yet, but I think it could get there.
It's not an overreaction, in my opinion, because I don't see a team coming, just as you mentioned, to give 2 first-round picks for a situation, by the way. It's not like you're getting those guys like you get in the draft for 5 years at a very cheap price. You're then going to have to turn around with no leverage at all because you've just given up 2 first-round picks and throw him a mega contract. So it doesn't behoove the Giants to really lessen their price, and it doesn't behoove a team to come in and give that steep of a bounty. So I just think that ultimately, from a business perspective, he'll be on the team. Whether he's on the team in 2019, that's a whole different debate.
Yeah, I agree. It's not an overreaction. That they got to do everything they can to try and keep this kid on their team, on their roster. I say pay him. I say give him that contract. I know he's playing hardball and saying that I'm not going to step a foot on a field until I get a contract. Well, new head coach, new GM. Show now you can appease the best player on your roster. Right? That you can go in there and make a relationship. Go ahead, Dan.
New offense. They want him there as much as possible to learn it, right? They want to see him run on that ankle. That ankle injury cost him all his games last year. They want to see how that's going. So if he shows up in the next couple of weeks for this voluntary work and he shows them how he's running, that could be a big step in terms of repairing that relationship.
Well, let me amend this statement then, since there's agreement here that he'll be on the roster. But it takes 2 to tango. So what if I amend that statement to say he will be on the field week one? Because that has something to do with his own volition as well, not just the team's.
Yeah, that's an overreaction for me. I mean, because it's possible actually that he will not be on the field. I mean, based on his demands, based on, is Gettleman hard-headed? I mean, does he want to try and play hardball with him?
He has a history of playing hardball.
Absolutely. He could possibly be serious about what he's saying, and he's not playing week one.
You bring up a key point here, Dave Gettleman. Let's not forget this is the same guy who rescinded the franchise tag on Josh Norman and let him walk as a free agent. Now, he has said that he learned from that and recognizes that you have to sometimes figure out a way to get that talent on the field. We'll find out whether he learned from it, but I certainly don't think it's an overreaction. The ball at that point will be in Beckham's hand.
Well, and there's other examples besides Josh Norman, too. I mean, there's a history there if you're reading the tea leaves with Gettleman. Yes,
and they just hired him. It's not like Dave Gettleman's been there for years. You don't hire Dave Gettleman knowing that Odell Beckham's contract situation is unsettled with the idea that, this is now going to be super smooth. You hire Dave Gettleman because you know you really need a tough guy across the table.
Right,
fans remember actually how poorly Eli was treated last year by the previous organization, and now to see this happening now with one of their favorites currently, I mean, they want Odell Beckham on the field in New York.
He's a generational player.
He wants to be there, too. Come on, New York.
He wants to be there.
Like he's going to Cleveland.
The fans love him. His teammates love him. Honestly,
he played well in Cleveland.
He played excellent there, but
we throw this sort of off-the-field umbrella over guys, and it's very important to remember, and I've said this before at this table, about Odell Beckham. He shows up on time. Yes. He works hard in practice. He contributes in the meetings. He's in the building. He causes them no problems. They don't love the way he conducts himself in the offseason and that everything's on Snapchat or whatever it is. And they don't love that he loses his temper and costs them 15 yards in the middle of games. Those are things they need him to get under control, and if he shows that he can, I think they'll be more willing to pay.
Well, but that emotion, too, is a double-edged sword. In part, is what allows him at times to play so...
Sure, but, you still have to
you got to keep it in check. Yeah, typically.
Yeah, ideally.
Darn it.
It's a normal day. You're rushing out the door to get to work on time when suddenly... there it is, the dreaded service light. So what is it this time? Tire pressure? Low coolant? Time for an oil change? When it comes to service lights, head to Jiffy Lube. We've got you covered. Drive in today and make the switch to Pennzoil. Ask for Pennzoil Synthetics, getting you back on the road in a jiffy. Jiffy Lube. Leave worry behind.
All right. Listen, how about this for overreaction? The Giants will draft a quarterback with the number 2 pick in the draft. We've talked about this, and we'll continue up until April 26th. But is that an overreaction, Teddy, to say they'll take a QB?
Yeah, that's an overreaction.
Why did I start with
This
Teddy?
is an overreaction.
What did I expect?
quarterback.
He thinks it's an overreaction to even have quarterback.
Right, exactly.
You got a quarterback, and Eli Manning not only thinks he can still do it, all right? Listen.
That one.
I missed that one, by the way.
You moved one.
Who needs a quarterback?
Yeah, overrated.
They're going to try to accumulate players. I think it's a good possibility that they're the spot that maybe a Buffalo or someone moves up to, and they get to accumulate some picks.
Yeah, I think you accumulate, and whether you're accumulating picks or players, if you do have that quarterback there and you're a new regime, I think you go out and you get a player who can contribute with Eli Manning as opposed to trying to build for the future beyond him. And when you do look at the players that are there, whether it's Chubb or Barkley, I mean, there's 2 really talented players. I understand that the quarterbacks in this draft are very good, but if you have the luxury of having a quarterback, that's when you can look at that pick and say, man, I can get a really good player if you don't trade it.
JPP, right? JPP's gone.
Yeah.
Their quarterback's 37 years old.
Sure.
At some point in the next couple of years, you're going to need one, right? And I think it's not an overreaction. I think it's very possible that they do take a quarterback there, even if they trade back a couple spots and do it, because you don't know when you're going to be up here again. And ideally, if you're the Giants, you're not picking number 2 again anytime soon. And you may not have the quarterback class to choose from that you have this year. So if you wait a year or 2 because you have Eli Manning for another couple of years, you might not be in position to find your franchise guy. So the reason I say not an overreaction is if the Giants have a guy, a quarterback in this draft that they really believe is the long-term franchise.
That's the question.
Yes, that's the if. If that's the case, then I think they could end up taking.
Sure.
If Sam Darnold is their guy,
right,
and Cleveland takes Josh Allen, then maybe the Giants sit put at number 2 and take Darnold. So I think it's entirely possible.
It's an interesting spot to be in because it's such as luxury is the wrong word to pick it too, but you don't want that luxury again anytime soon because that means things haven't gone so well.
Yeah. I don't know how the Eli Manning mentality could handle that. I'm the quarterback, and they draft someone at number 2.
Point,
and now I am sitting here biding my time, waiting for him to have his.
37 though with his career, you think that'd still be an issue?
These quarterbacks.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
That room.
They're fragile. These cute. They are. They're fragile.
I'll say this: the conversations I've had with people around that situation, I've been led to believe that Eli would be okay with this idea.
Okay.
Doesn't everybody have to be at some point?
Right. I mean, he remembers what Kurt Warner did for him, and not that it's an equivalent situation, but I think that in his mind, he sees himself as maybe a guy that could make that kind of contribution long term, helping groom a guy. I don't think he's in a hurry to leave, but if you're telling him, here's a guy that's going to sit for an entire year and then we'll see what happens, I don't think he'd be completely opposed.
So we know, or we expect, barring anything unforeseen, that Eli Manning will start week 1. I mean, they've been committed. They've been pretty clear on that. Does he start week 16?
I don't know. Last time they benched him, everybody got fired. So
well, I'm not suggesting they bench him. There are any number of reasons he may not play throughout.
But think long and hard before you do that.
We'll have to see who they draft.
That wasn't a smart move, I think. In
didn't
hindsight,
work out so great.
It didn't. Does he play all 16?
I would say yes, based on if they get a quarterback at the number 2 position, okay, and then you've seen the statements by teams in the past saying this quarterback is going to sit the entire year.
That's different with Eli, no?
I would think they would hold their word to Eli this time.
Yeah, because this time.
This time.
He's learning their lessons.
This isn't Chad Henne and Blake Bortles or Carson Wentz and Sam Bradford. We're talking about Eli Manning.
This is Ring of Honor, Hall of Fame potentially, 2-time Super Bowl champion. You make
Who
sure
would ever bench Eli Manning?
Whatever his exit is, you make sure it's handled the right way.
The answer to that trivia question we now know. Who would ever bench Eli Manning again? I don't know if I know that answer. Not anytime soon, anyway. Not right this minute. The Indianapolis Colts won just 4 games last season. That spells opportunity for their new head coach, Frank Reich. He takes over along with new coordinators on both sides of the ball amid continued questions regarding the health of his franchise quarterback, although Andrew Luck has reportedly taken steps in the right direction. More overreaction Monday, but not about Andrew Luck. We know he's a talented quarterback. Here's their statement. Deanne has called this mean. I don't know about that.
It is mean.
It's not mean. Well,
it's mean on April 2nd.
Colts have the least talented roster
April 2nd.
in the National Football League. Well, you can call it an overreaction.
I haven't even had the draft yet.
Why don't you just call it the 32nd best?
If you say all this and then say it's not an overreaction.
No, I say overreaction because I think there are other strong candidates for the honor.
Which isn't mean, apparently.
Well, I mean, look, the Cleveland Browns just went 1-31 the last 2 years. I'm sure they're not stacked, right? I mean, like, I don't know. The Arizona Cardinals are a roster in flux. I'm not sure what's left in Miami after everything that's happened there this year. So I think it's early to say something like this. Look, it's a team that has a lot of work to do. That's why it's a no-brainer for them to trade out from 3 down to 6 to get 3 second-round picks. They know they have more work to do, but I'm not sure it's 100% that they're the least talented.
Yeah, I'll go overreaction too. I mean, let's say Andrew Luck is healthy. That's a big if here. Okay, I know there's a lot of question marks regarding that. He may have a year where he can be there for all 16. T.Y. Hilton's a good receiver. Jack Doyle. I mean, there are some rosters in the NFL that had no Pro Bowl representation last year. Those were 2 Pro Bowl representatives for the Colts last year. So let's say that's an overreaction.
They got a couple wins, and when you look at the Browns, the fact that they were 0-16, and you consider the fact that the Browns have a quarterback coming in Tyrod Taylor. We're not talking about the draft here. And the Colts have a quarterback in Andrew Luck. T.Y. Hilton against Jarvis Landry. Like, I'm not trying to knock on the Browns here. I'm just saying that I don't think that a team with Andrew Luck on the roster, maybe not on the field.
If Andrew Luck, he is on that roster. I would say if Andrew Luck's not on that roster, I think we have a different conversation.
But he is on that roster.
But he is. Yeah. In fairness,
that's in that position, albeit overrated, according to Teddy. I think is actually
that franchise quarterback spot is for real.
Yes, I think it's an overreaction to say the Colts are the worst.
What about the head coach? He's one of 7 new head coaches. Is this the toughest job, though?
Well, once again, you look at Andrew Luck.
First time head,
exactly where we're going with this one.
You just look to Andrew Luck. I mean, that's going to make his job incredibly difficult. I mean, Jacoby Brissett came in there and did some good things for them last year. I mean, in the middle of the season, albeit. So that would be a very difficult job for Frank Reich if Andrew Luck isn't there.
It's tough. I mean, Arizona, I think, is a tough, almost kind of a rebuild at this point. The Giants aren't in a great place in franchise history. They have a lot of talent in certain key places on their roster, but obviously, there's some issues to sort through there as the new coach, as we've been discussing. So, but yeah, I mean, it's one of the. It's
hard for me to think of the Giants with all those pieces they have in the same category. But
3-13.
I was going to say look no farther than last season, and to be proven incorrect. The final of our 7 teams who have the opportunity to start workouts this week because they have new head coaches are the Tennessee Titans, and that would be Mike Vrabel. Teddy knows this guy.
Hey,
1-3 rings in New England.
Be the DC there?
And he takes over in Tennessee now. He'll need Marcus Mariota to return to form, but the new head coach has wasted precious little time making his mark on the Tennessee Titans. They cut veteran running back DeMarco Murray 2 years after he led the AFC in rush yards. That saved about $6.5 million in salary. They found a roster replacement in former Patriot Dion Lewis. Tennessee signed Lewis to a 4-year deal worth $11.5 million in guaranteed money. And then they also went shopping for a corner, found one in New England as well. Malcolm Butler giving the former undrafted free agent a 5-year deal worth $30 million in guarantees. How's this for Overreaction Monday? Marcus Mariota is the best quarterback, Teddy, in the AFC South. Is this an overreaction?
He's a good player, a good quarterback, but I'm going to say that's an overreaction. I like the kid in Houston, Deshaun Watson, and what he was able to do last year and just take over games. I mean, in that way, putting the whole offense on his back. Has Mariota done that at times? But I just think Deshaun Watson, right now for me, with the health of Andrew Luck in question, Mariota's good. I just go with Deshaun Watson and the Texans.
He was electric when he was out there.
I'm going to disagree and say it's not an overreaction, and not necessarily because I think that Deshaun Watson isn't going to be a star in the NFL, but at that time in Marcus Mariota's career, I felt like we saw an electric player as well, and his sample size is greater than Watson's at this point. I'm contradicting myself a little bit because I just said how important Andrew Luck is in that division. But again, he hasn't been able to get on the field. Marcus Mariota has done enough, in my opinion, to show that he's the best. Can he be unseated? Certainly. Could that happen as soon as this season? Absolutely. But for now, based on what we've seen in terms of his sample size, I'll say that it's not an overreaction that he's the best.
I agree with Teddy. I say it's an overreaction. I'd feel a lot more comfortable making this statement about a guy who didn't just have 13 touchdowns against 15 interceptions last year. I mean, it was not a great year for Marcus Mariota's case as the best quarterback in really any group. Now, he had a great postseason, and he's obviously shown some flashes. I think, given the totality of their careers, I would say Andrew Luck is the best quarterback in this division of course, as Jeff points out, it's been a while since we've seen him play.
The division, though, some intriguing quarterback situations.
Absolutely.
Because you've got some questions about Andrew Luck's health. What will Deshaun Watson be like in year 2 after coming back from an injury? Will Marcus Mariota bounce back? Really some interesting
And don't forget
situations.
about Blake Bortles.
And don't speak on Blake Bortles because he did just win the division. 7 of our 32 NFL teams have new head coaches for 2018, and those teams can begin their offseason workouts as early as today, and there are plenty for these 7 new head coaches to work on. In fact, that's in large part why they're there. So it's time for a game we call More or Less. And if you forget that, it's okay, because we got it right here.
More real big.
Or less, okay? Mm-hmm. And you guys can put yourselves in front of your answer. So stay right there for now. But we'll start with this. John Gruden enters his second stint as the Oakland Raiders head coach. You may remember it was a pretty big deal. He signed a 10-year contract worth $100 million coming out of the booth to help get the Raiders back to the playoffs after missing them in 2017. So here's our first. John Gruden coaching his contract of 10 years with the Raiders. That's a long time. Will he coach more than 10 years, Dan? Or less, and you're already moving.
This is the biggest softball in the whole entire show.
Well, we're warming up. We're starting easy.
They change 7 coaches every single year. You tell me one of them's going to get 10
well,
years.
He signed a big deal.
Yeah, I get it. Look, it's not. I don't think it's any insult to John Gruden or the Raiders to pick less year. I mean, 10 is a long, long time. How many coaches have ever coached at least 10 years in the NFL with the same team? I'm not saying he will fail, but he could be a success and still not get the full 10 years on the contract.
You're all going to answer. You can't just.
What you got? Go ahead.
Are you staying over here?
Not a chance.
Oh, gotta be. Come on.
I know you guys want to come hang out with me.
I'm going to come right over here. $100 million in 10 years. It sounds like the negotiation was something out of Austin Powers, first of all.
It went pretty well for John
$100 million. No, he's not going to make it 10 years. Come on home, John. Just come on home back to
Wait, you got to let him coach one
give him
for crying out
Give him a couple years.
Right.
Okay.
It's almost a decade now.
John Gruden.
I know. Listen, I would go. I'm just standing right here. I would go over there.
I hear all the talk. I feel all the energy from Coach Gruden. I mean, coming over here tomorrow, it'd be easily to do. He's in there. He never wanted to leave. He said he never wanted to leave, Wendy. Why would he coach more than 10?
Okay, there we go. I know you're starting
I would say less than 10. I mean, it's just
That's
like these guys
time,
are talking
guys.
about. That's
okay.
They could move 2 more times
but
in 10 years.
I am impressed that you 3 have learned how we're going to play this, and I was skeptical, so I'm impressed. How about Andrew Luck? We talked about him just a few minutes ago. So many questions about his health. He is set to return, we hope, or at least that's the intention. He's working to get that shoulder strong again. Andrew Luck starting 8 games this season. Do we anticipate more or less? And I can tell you, if you're a Colts fan, you certainly hope the answer is right behind me, but we just don't know. There's still some question marks. Who starts here with Andrew Luck?
Okay,
8 games.
If I'm saying less, that means Andrew Luck is not as healthy as we think he is. He's got a lot more to go, but we're in April. I say, why not? This is why not April for me. I'm going over here to more.
Why not? You have
and I think Andrew Luck, he had the year off. They treated that rehabilitation properly. He went to Europe or wherever he went. He got it right.
This is Europe. He went to Europe.
I am going to say Andrew Luck is going to start more than, 8 games?
Yeah.
Why is Europe so much better at these blood transfusion things? By the way, I'm gonna just we're gonna keep this. I don't know my level of conviction, but I'm gonna come over here to less, and I'm gonna say that because
it's the first time you disagreed with Teddy all day.
That's not true.
Really?
I say this only because
true.
I look at the situation last year. I'm just trying to hold people a little more accountable, and I know they're not there anymore, but when you tell us all year that Andrew Luck is going to be just fine, and then all of a sudden he doesn't play for the entirety of the season, I start to wonder when he is ever going to be just fine. So this is more about accountability. I'll believe it when I see it at this point, whether Andrew Luck is in fact just fine.
I think believing it when you see it is prudent at this case, just because we've seen the contrary, Dan. I mean, I agree with you.
Come on over, bud.
I'm a skeptic.
Come on over.
By nature.
I call you
and
by
trade.
Come on.
And by trade. And I want to be swayed by Jeff's argument. But as was the case, maybe I'm just feeling a little better about the Colts. Maybe just a little more optimistic.
You've been happy lately.
Because I haven't looked out the window and seen April snow in about an hour and a half. Maybe I'm feeling good. I'm going to say Andrew Luck plays more than 8 games in 2018.
Positive vibes.
It's only April. There's plenty of time to get salty and negative and skeptical and cynical.
And be the Dan we know and love.
I'm Team Teddy. optimism. Even though it's about a quarterback, which makes me surprised.
In April? We're in April.
What did you call it? Why not April?
Why not April?
Why not April? How about this for why not? New Bears head coach Matt Nagy takes over a team where a quarterback needs to improve. Mitchell Trubisky trying to fare better than he did in his rookie season. Played in 12 games through a total of 7 touchdowns. But he's coming, Matt Nagy is, from a high-octane Chiefs offense, and he wants to see the same in Chicago. So here's where we start. Mitchell Trubisky, 20 passing touchdowns this season. Ooh. Will we see more or less?
So
Gentlemen.
Go first? Yeah, because I just don't know.
First of all, it's fewer, okay? I'm a grammar nerd. It should not say less. It should say fewer when we're talking about, numbers.
You're a nerd. I don't know about the grammar part.
Fewer. Terrible. So I will say fewer than 20 touchdown passes because, to continue the grammar lesson, to whom will he be throwing these passes? Allen Robinson, we've already talked about coming off an injury. Trey Burton, we don't know if he can be a number 1 tight end. Taylor Gabriel was a piece in Atlanta, but not necessarily the same kind of piece he's going to be there. I just think that's a lot to ask of second-year quarterback Mitchell Trubisky in a new offense with some question marks around him. I think the Bears will be on the rise. I just don't think it's going to happen overnight.
I was originally inclined to go with you, Dan, but first of all, since you're such a negative person, I'm going to be the optimist here and say that he is going to have more than that. And I'm going to look toward Allen Robinson. I love what the Jaguars have continued to do over the past few years. I think that they might have made a mistake by letting Allen Robinson go there. This guy has been terrific in the early stages of his NFL career, to the point where I don't know that most of the NFL even realizes that, because he was playing in Jacksonville for the start of it. But I do believe that he is a red zone threat, capable of scoring a lot of touchdowns. Trubisky, we've already talked about it, on the verge of a potential breakout year. I'm going to say he's going to have more.
I'm going to call you tiebreaker Teddy.
Yes, we had the Jacksonville Jaguars in the AFC Championship game last year. We also had Jared Goff break out with a new, young, offensive-minded head coach. And that's why I say it's going to be more.
Continue.
Why not? Why can't Mitch Trubisky throw for over 20? Because with that new offense coming in from Matt Nagy, Helfrich's coming over, like I said earlier, from a year off, basically, from the University of Oregon. They're going to catch teams off guard. They're going to spread it around. It's going to be catch and run. Watch Tariq Cohen get about five or 7 of those.
Dan over there with
Come on, here we go. Trubisky, go ahead and get you about, I wouldn't say 29.
According to Teddy, by the way, no one is going to lose a single game this year.
21.
Everybody is going to
we don't tell the truth, though, here on this show.
Seriously,
Dan called himself a nerd.
If he throws 19 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions and they run the ball like crazy, that could be a big year. He doesn't have to get 20.
Words, numbers.
Second year.
Here we go. Odell Beckham.
I used to be a math nerd, too.
Again, I'm with you on the nerd part.
There's a lot
no argument.
A lot coming out here.
Odell Beckham, $18 million per year with his new deal. Well, that's the question. But here's why he might. He's topped 90 catches, 1,300 yards, and 10 touchdowns in each of his first 3 seasons. He has been clear he wants a new deal. He is entering the final year of his contract, and we know all the other stuff. We've talked about it ad nauseum. So $18 million. Does he get more or less, fellas?
Show me the money!
Wow. That's it?
That's it. That's all I need to say. He's going to
hey guys, salary cap's going up. Even if you backload the contract, I think he's going to get more than $18 million.
You think he gets more than $18 million?
I do. Okay. I really, really do.
Well, I guess that's standing right there.
Now that's saying he gets a contract. I believe he deserves more than $18 million a year, but I'm going over here to less because I think Gettleman plays hardball. I think it's going to be a rough year.
By the way, it is less. We're dealing with a singular quantity here in $18 million. It's not fewer. It is less. But I say Antonio Brown's at $17 million. I think he'll beat that, but I don't think he'll beat it by $1 million a year.
Hey, I didn't say it would be with the Giants. Who knows where it'll be?
So.
That's
fewer. It's not fewer, it's less. I'm just trying to take in the...
Less when you're dealing with the singular quantity of $18 million.
All right, and you both say less.
I say less.
But you say...
I say more.
No, you said more. All right, listen, Odell Beckham Jr., 18 million reasons at least to... Things are looking up.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like a whole new person.
Disclaimer, you will not become a whole new person. This is impossible. You might be able to join a gym or diet program, buy a new wardrobe, get hair implants, but your DNA and physical form will remain the same. Geico waives any and all liability if you attempt to become a new person, except a cyborg. If you choose to become a half-human, half-cybernetic organism with lasers for eyes, the Geico legal team would be cool with that, because, quote, laser eyes are pretty sweet. Pew, 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 end quote.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.